Hi guys, it's your host K Did. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. This week will be part 2 of the podcast that you heard last week. If you have not listened to that yet, maybe you want to go back and listen to that first before you come on here. But if you don't want to go back, you can still listen to this podcast and you'll be able to still get vital information. Let me get some housekeeping out the way. So please go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And we do a lot of updates on Twitter about resources and jobs. So if you are interested in things like that, definitely come and check it out. Usually we don't do a podcast like this in two parts, but this time it was a very interesting conversation, and I hope that you like it and enjoy. Also, we have other things coming up. We have, as you know, this is October. I feel like right now it's September for me, but by the time you hear this part, it'll be in October. And at that point, we're going to be having Domestic Violence Month, Awareness Month. If you did not know, that's what October is. And we're going to be having a panel coming up. So we don't have the date yet for you to give out, but right now we're telling you that it's coming soon. So guys, be on the lookout for that. And hopefully the things that we give you can be able to help you and your family. So thank you for listening, and talk to you next time. Bye.
Right. And the system has changed so much where everyone has so many tasks to do that just being able to take time with people without doing an ILP or saying, what housing, where's your housing search log this week? There are not as many, as I would call, like, by chance or like happenstance conversations that people get to have where you really get to know someone and understand what their needs are. Um, some so it's really, and everybody is not just gonna meet you and tell you all their business, and that's a healthy thing, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I was like, I worry about the folks who they meet you and 5 minutes later they've told you their whole life story. And do that with everyone. You can be going through someone and just need to talk at that moment, but most people are not going to do that. They're and so if no one knows that this is a need that you have, how do you get the information? Um, and that's, so putting social workers in shelters, putting youth staff or childcare staff in shelters, and making sure that parents have someone to go to where they may not have the opportunity to speak to their caseworker, that in the moment when someone is with your baby and being loving to your child,
Right.
and your child likes this person and they're attending program, that they have the opportunity to say, hey, I've noticed something going on, or I'm having this challenge, and what do you think, or what should I do, or or sometimes it's just like, is this normal?
Right.
um
That's what it is too. When you're a first time mom, I'll give you an example. Granted, I grew up with a lot of kids, and I was babysitting kids from like the age of 8, which is not good or for anybody's kid, but it happened. Life goes on. The kids are still alive, so that's good. Funny, I have another funny story. I actually met one of the kids I used to clean his diapers for when I was working at this college, and he said his name, and I was like, hold up, and I looked at the last name, I'm like, hold on, are you this person? I used to clean your diapers. It was just it's a mess. I worked with a lot of kids over my years, and
hmm
when I had my daughter, for some reason, she's always looked at, like, like, I don't know what it is. And then my friend had a baby a month after me, and she asked me if it was normal for her. I was like, okay, it's normal. Her eyes, I mean, I would think that she was dead, because her eyes, I mean, would just be open, looking at the light. A bug could just probably just fly right in there if it wanted to. And eyes just wide open, looking, and she'll blink. I promise you, probably twice an hour, twice a minute. I thought she was dead half the time. And I was
Yeah,
like,
and
oh my God,
you're
is this
just like, oh
normal?
my God, what's happening? What is this baby doing?
Like,
Like,
and I was like, is she defective? Like, because I've heard also some kids, when they look at light like that, it's like they have something's wrong with their brain a little. So I thought I was going crazy. So then my friend had her baby. She said, "Oh my God!" And I came with the baby to the hospital. She said, "Oh, she does it too." And I'm like, "What?" She said, "Looks at the light. I thought it was only my son." And I was like, "Okay, this is a normal thing." But I thought
Hmm.
I thought someone was wrong with my daughter, first of all. So
Yeah.
just a simple thing like that could drive you nuts because you're a first time mom, hoping you're doing the best. The child, you just like keep the baby alive, feed the food.
Mhm.
It's it's a lot. Especially and then being in shelter is an even more of a stressful,
Mhm.
environment.
You have somebody knocking on your door. Is the baby in the crib? You can't do this. Where's your child? No, you
Yeah.
can't. Let's drop them off at your mom's house. It's a lot. And I think that, when you are running a program, that it's incumbent upon all of us to know that it is a lot.
It is.
And sometimes people just don't want you in your business and they have a right to not have you in their business and say no.
That's true. One thing I hated about shelter, well, I hated a lot of stuff, but the first thing I hated is a fire drill.
Hmm.
I came in, I think I want to say it was probably the second or third day I was at a shelter in the Bronx. And they didn't inform me that we have fire drills. This is my first time in shelter. Maybe it wasn't in the handbook. I don't know. I'm just trying to go to work in Manhattan, drop my baby off from Brooklyn, and I lived in the Bronx. I was doing a lot
Oh,
just to survive.
oh, wow.
Yes, I didn't want my daughter. One thing I was all about is consistency. I didn't want her from daycare to daycare. And at the time, um, I was in another shelter. It was in Manhattan, and they took me out after the 10 days and put me in the Bronx. So I didn't want to take her all around New York City and not know where we're gonna stay and keep on transferring her everything. And HRA was paying for her daycare, so to go back to HRA to change that out, get for another is too much. And I don't trust anybody with my kid anyway. So I trust the
Hmm.
person. She went to my church. I felt fine with her. I mean,
Yeah,
the alarm is going
yeah,
off.
it's
Baby's
really, really
crying. It's
challenging. But you know
horrible.
what? I can relate because, you know, um, well, one of the unique things about Henry Street, it was the first shelter in the country, right? The first apartment
Oh
style shelter
wow.
in the country was our urban family center. And they have a really unique model where staff live at the shelter and
Oh really?
provide services, and provide services after hours on the weekends. And while I was in graduate school, in order to save money and be able to pay for school, I decided to be one of the live-in staff at our urban family center. So
That's pretty cool,
I worked
actually.
in the evenings and was, on call in case there was any issues. So as a resident, I had to get up in the middle of the night when people put the fire alarm too. And I
They
would
pulled the fire alarm. We have fire drills.
sometimes we had fire drills. Sometimes the kids would pull the fire alarm.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes, you know, you just be like, what's going on? I just went to bed. I got to get up in the morning. I have to write this paper. So it was a lot. And I was like, oh my God, this is what the families are going through.
Right.
So you have a whole different kind of understanding
It's
when
true.
you have experienced it. And I say that, oh, there's nothing like being woken up out of your sleep and only to find out that someone thought that it would be funny to pull it, or that, I'd say most of the times it was a small child who just saw but and they just are like, oh, what's that? And it's curiosity and they'll go and pull it.
Oh,
And you're
wow.
like, oh no, here we go. But yeah, you're woken up out of your sleep and you're like, oh, I just need one more hour, please. And I was one of those people who once I'm awake and it's really hard for me to go back to sleep after I've been awakened. So yeah, it was a lot.
I think that thing affected me in a bad. I'm a person who's scared of fire naturally, but I think it worked out in a bad way because it got to a point that I wouldn't get up for the fire drill, and it could have been really a fire, and I would have died. because
Mm-hmm.
it happened so often. Like, I'm not there in the daytime, so I never knew how much fire drills they had in the daytime. But apparently, I guess by their regulations, you're supposed to have it at night too, and in the
Yeah,
daytime
you're
because
supposed to
everybody.
do every month, you're supposed to do one on
We had
each
it.
shift. So
Oh,
there has
yeah.
to be at least 3 fire drills every month. So some of those that you thought were drills were probably just someone pulling the fire alarm because it's one on each shift, morning, afternoon, and night, um, every month on a monthly basis. So, and that is a fire department regulation.
Oh wow. I did not know. I knew that part, but it was just so annoying. I'm sorry. After a while, because they'll tell you, you get like they'll talk to you like you try to give you strikes kind of thing if you don't come to
Hmm.
them. But after a while, I'm like, I'm not coming. My daughter, after the first like 5 or 6, she started sleeping right through them, and I started just ignoring it and just going back to sleep until they finished because it was happening. It was too much, and then they'll come on your door. We didn't see you at the fire drill. Are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm tired of the fire drills. So it's
Yeah.
honestly not good. It's because it's for safety. So I understand why they do it. So you can always know where your closest exit is or different things. But it's just so annoying being up at 2 or 3 in the morning and a alarm is literally blasting in your ear. And then another girl who was there, which I feel so bad for her. Luckily she didn't. Like people when they see flashing lights, they can get seizures.
Hmm.
And it wasn't. It was a sound plus the lights were flashing in her room. She said, "Oh my gosh, do you know I can get seizures like this? I should know this thing. I don't think like ask you these questions about health or whatever. It's been a while, but she said this is not healthy for me or my baby. Well, I don't. She said mostly for her, but she said it's not good for you. And she had like a newborn too on top of that. So it was like it was a lot already. So
So
I understand why they
if
have to do it,
yeah,
but it could be a
if
safety
someone
thing,
has the sounds can be a trigger for people who have who are autistic as well.
right?
Um, but if she may have been in the handicap unit because the flashing lights makes me think that she was in a handicap unit
Mm.
because they will have an apartment so that if someone is hearing impaired that they have the lights to indicate that
Oh,
the alarm is going off. um, and if they don't have anyone who's hearing impaired, they're not just, the system is there's always a need
right.
for a bed. So they're not going to just leave the unit empty. They move someone else into that unit. Uh,
That's
and
understandable.
it may be that she was in that designated unit. Um, but there's you have to juggle a lot. So
It's true.
I always say that um you're juggling as a parent, you're juggling as an employee, you're juggling as a resident of shelter and still trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy and and your contacts with your family, with your friends. Um, so you become a master at trying to make things work.
That's so true. It's a juggling act for sure. it's
Mhm.
it's a lot. I don't know if you see the people before, like not before, but obviously you're not at path with them. But when they do you see them initially when they come in, and what are the things that clients say are the worst things before they get into the like a unit or something like that? What's the experience they feel about path that you have heard about?
I think that the biggest thing that, people, of course, don't like the wait, and that gets frustrating. But I think that the biggest thing is the fear. Um, you know, there's that one central office that everybody has to go to apply, and it always surprises me how many people have never left their borough. So if someone is from, Brooklyn or Staten Island or Queens, and they may have never been to the Bronx and they have to go and troop up to the Bronx and go and apply at Path, and they have no idea what to expect when they get there, someone has just told them this is how you access shelter. And so it's very anxiety provoking, because people don't know where it is that they're going, how they're going to be received, um, and what's going to happen when they get there. So when people go to path, it's makes it, I think, a pressure cooker because of the stress. And you know, folks may not show up with have all of the documents available to support their application for emergency housing when they arrive. It may be that, you know, it's a day where there's a lot of people applying and they had a long wait. Um, People may be frustrated because they're not allowed to bring food in, and they were there for hours and they don't want the food or don't like it, the food that they serve at Path. Um, but I always say to people when they arrive that, you've gone through that experience and I know that it was tough, but you're here now. Um, and, you know, we are going to try and meet your needs. Um, so we always start off with trying to do an intake by saying to people, are you okay? Do you need do you have you eaten today? Do you want some water? Um, do you need to use the bathroom? Um, uh, Before we get started, let me tell you what is going to happen, because I think it alleviates a lot of the anxiety of I have to tell my story all over again. And what is this person going to ask me now? Um, if people kind of know what to expect. And then as you're doing an intake, um, and getting people up to their apartment, we need to, number one, make sure that it's clean. To make sure that there are basic things that people are gonna need, pots, pans, toilet paper inside of the apartment kit, because there's nothing like getting there in the middle of the night and going to the bathroom and realizing that there is none. Um, we started keeping a pantry on site because sometimes people do arrive and all the stores or restaurants in the neighborhood have closed. So, and they haven't had anything to eat. So let's keep some basic staples on site so that if it's midnight and someone tells you that they haven't eaten, that there's at least some basic things, rather it's cereal or someone can open up some, spaghetti Chef Boyardee or oodles and noodles. And those folks are like, oh, well, that's not healthy. It's like, yeah, but this is what people actually eat. you know um this is what's comfort food a lot of times for Black and brown folks. And if we're having an event, I'm going to make sure that there's something nutritious. But in the middle of the night when someone arrives, there's nothing like uh being able to make something quick to give your baby something to eat so that they don't go to bed hungry.
That is so true. I don't think people realize that, and I think feel like food is like, I'm not gonna say a stressor, but some of the shelters don't give the best, and they give like freezer meals without any taste. So for them to give things that people can actually, like, or even open it at a certain time, that's pretty cool. Because some shelters they give you at a certain time to eat, and if you're not
Hmm.
there for it, you just don't get anything, which I think is
Yeah.
unreasonable. Like example for me, I went to work and I came back from I worked in Manhattan. My daughter was in Brooklyn. I lived in the Bronx. I'm gonna get back late. I promise you that. I'm not gonna get back anytime in the daytime. And every time they had food for like You can like microwavable food, and they had baby food, and I wasn't offered anything because I wasn't there at the time they had it. Which is, that I work. I give you a letter for my job, so you know that I'm working. Like I'm out there playing. I'm actually
Yeah.
trying to get out of the shelter, and it's crazy that they didn't give me the opportunity to get anything for my child. And baby formula is expensive,
Hmm.
so
Yeah. Our our shelter, there's kitchens, so people are able to prepare their own meals, but you have to have something that you can buy in order to be able to prepare it,
right.
you know. And I'm all for healthy eating, but I also know that culturally there are things that we like and that people are actually going to eat.
That's true. That's also true. So, in like how it's set up, because I've heard a lot of different way these shelters are done, which is some actually I'm surprised about a little bit. One girl said she shared a room with somebody, which I never knew family shelters did that. I went to 4 different shelters. I never shared a room with anybody.
Hmm.
The some shelters I was in had stoves or hot pots, like some way to cook food at least. Some didn't have anything. I just had a refrigerator. How is the setup in your place? Because you said kitchens, but it's not like they're sharing, or do they have their own unit with their
No,
own
it's a
stuff?
studio apartment with a full kitchen. So there's a stove, a refrigerator, we have a microwave. So they're fortunate to have both a stove and a microwave. So it's literally, there's private bathrooms. So it's literally a studio apartment.
That's nice. It's
Yeah.
nice. I feel like all shelters should be that way. I don't feel like well, single. I'm not talking about single shelters, the men and the women and the youth. I'm talking about families right now. I feel like they should have their own place. Maybe for a single shelter, probably they'll have like to give everybody their own kitchen and everything. Probably be too much. It probably like have everybody have their own room and have like one kitchen and 4 people could go to a kitchen. Probably be easier and probably more functional for that setup. But I think that all family shelters should have a stove and different things. Because sometimes, with example, if you buy your food, you want somewhere to cook it. Microwave food to me, trying to get used
Yeah.
to it, but it don't taste the best. I'm sorry, I don't know what they put in the microwave to make it. It's just not hitting like it's supposed to. Like people put pizza in microwaves. I think it's horrible. It's better in the air
Yeah.
fryer or oven. I just can't eat it that way. But to each his own. It
Yeah.
just is very interesting. When a person
Yeah, I
comes from
think that, having people, because, everyone, I always say, we are who we are because of our background, our culture, and we carry that with us everywhere. And nobody knows how to make what you like better than you know how to make what you like. So if you have someone who may be sharing, making or consuming your culture, the food from your culture is important, then it's nice to be able to have the ability to prepare that and be able to do that instead of um, not being able to have it for however long you are in shelter because you don't have any place to cook.
again, another question from like past coming into shelter. Have you seen that when people come into the shelter that they don't know about certain resources they should have been told from path before they got there? Or do you think that they know all the information they're supposed to know before they get to you guys?
It's hard to say, because I think it may depend upon who did the intake or who met with the person at path. And I also, well, and this has always sort of been my feeling, is that so much is being done and asked of people in path that I don't know how much folks would really retain if they're even if they're given a whole list of resources. Um, they have you have to meet with someone to talk about where you've been living. You have to meet with um some, you do a medical
HRA.
screen. You have to meet with someone from HRA, they do a domestic violence screening, they do a, so it's
They do a
all
health
these
screening
things that
too.
they do chat, they do a ACS, someone is also there. So there's so much going on that I don't know that that's the best time to tell people about a plethora of resources and how much they're really going to be able to comprehend or even remember, because if, especially if you're there with your child and you have all of this stuff going on around you, um and feeling anxious, or making sure that you know you, you are keeping the kids entertained, because they start getting restless when you're sitting there all that time. It's hard to be able to absorb and take in all of that information. I think that when people first enter shelter, that it is our duty to make sure that people understand what the process is going to be like, and assist with, you know, the asks from DHS so that they can become eligible, or um, translate the system's questions so that people are able to comply. Because a lot of times when people are being told that they're non-compliant because they didn't provide an address history or whatever, it's because they don't understand or may not have been told what they can use to substitute for a missing address or a missing time period. I think to people, did you go to the doctor? Do you have a library card? Do you have a cell phone bill with that address on? Do you have a person
Credit
who can
card.
write you a letter? Do you get your you know, d- any is your was your child ever registered to school there?
Yeah.
There may be other, when they say a bill, people think about rent. People think about, oh, did I have, I didn't pay Con Ed there. But there may be some other form of mail that you are receiving at an address, even if you are not the head of household at that address, that you can use to document that you resided there during a certain period of time. It could be that your child went to school, you never used that address for any bill, but your child went to school there and you registered your child in school at that house. So you can go and get a school letter that shows that your child, that they have a record of you living there, because that's where your child was registered for school. It may be that you went to the doctor's office and filled out, and you told the doctor that this is my address, or you called an ambulance from there, or you um stayed at at a friend's house for a couple of months, and you got a check there and you still have the stub. There are all kinds of things that people can substitute that we don't think about. So it takes some inquiry to say, what do you have? Do you really not have anything? Or or is there just things that you haven't thought about yet?
That's true. I've never thought about what stuff you can bring in. I use personally my Capital One bill because I was getting credit. I had credit cards, so that worked out in my favor of addresses. But so I always had like some way of doing it. And if you're paperless, all you gotta do is go on the computer and just honestly print it out and give it to
Mhm.
them. That's another way of showing where you were at a certain amount of time. If the person you're living with, if they really want you out, they'll get a certified letter. And sometimes people say they don't get a certified and it still works because as long as your number is on it, they can call you. I don't know if they still do home visits anymore, but before back in the day, they would come to your
Yeah.
house and knock on your door to make sure you're the person who, say they don't want that person there. So But
They
with
used to,
COVID,
but I
it's
think that they
different.
primarily do telephone calls now, especially
Yeah, with
during COVID.
COVID. Yeah,
Hmm.
which is understandable. I can understand. But it's just a lot of different things. Do you feel like a lot of people get the, I want to say, mental help or like counseling or things like that while they're in shelter? Or do they, mainly because it's so stressful, wait till after shelter to get the help that they need in that realm?
I think that's an area that it's gotten a lot better. Um, mm, there, well, there is a staff line for um, client care coordinators in shelters. So social work, licensed social workers. That's the title that we use. Um, but it has been a role that it's difficult to keep. Um, there's a lot of turnover in the role,
Okay,
um, primarily because uh, people want to get clinical hours so that they can become therapists.
got it.
Um, and you and shelter is not um, a it's not a site where you can earn those hours. You have to be in a mental health clinic or in an OMH funded program in order to be able to earn your hours toward getting your C. And that seems to be the desire of most um, people entering the profession these days, is to become a therapist and have their own business or be able to provide services so that they have more autonomy, and can, you know, set their own hours and do their own thing. Um, s- but s- there's always a higher need um, for services than there actually are people who to provide in the role. Um, I think that the other piece of it is that, how should I say this? Sometimes, even when people need the service and it's available, there is a reluctance for our residents may not want to see the social worker at shelter because they are associating the staff with um, the system.
Got
You
it.
know, the shelter is doing, they may have a disagreement with their caseworker, or they may have had bad experience at another shelter, or sometimes it's just that people want to keep parts of their lives separated. It's enough that I have to talk to you about my housing and my kids going to school and ACS in my business. There's something people sometimes want to keep their mental health to themselves and not share it with the staff because they feel as though they will be negatively viewed. Um,
Got it.
and they prefer to get services outside of the shelter system. Um, and but I think it's important to have it as an option. And what I tell my staff to do is that it's okay if somebody doesn't want to talk to you today. They might want to talk to you tomorrow.
That's true.
It's more important to develop a relationship and let people know that you're there and available so that if they have a need, um, they know that the resource is there.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I could, like, I was depressed in shelter, and then a lady, they had this one, I don't know if she's a caseworker or something, but they took, it happened only one time, and she made me take this test. Like, I guess it's supposed to, like, you answer, I think, 1 to 5 or some questions, and to say how you feel. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, you know that you're depressed? And I'm like, I'm not depressed. I was in
Yeah.
denial. But it's
Uh-huh.
but also like how much do you want to open? First of all, is your housing. ACS is always, I feel like, a thing that you think about in your mind also with all these governmental things. Do you want your child to be taken away from you because of how it has a bad stigma around it. That's the thing about it. In my mind, even now, it's like, they know that you have a mental health problem. Are they going to be able to make you keep your kids?
Mm-hmm.
You make your mind go
And
so far ahead that you can't help.
there's already more attention being placed upon you because you're living in shelter, right?
Right,
And you are interacting with institutions and that you, if you were in your own apartment, you would nobody's coming to your house to see if your baby's sleeping in the bed or in a crib.
right,
Nobody is you don't have a curfew, so no one is saying, oh, you kept your child out too late and you broke curfew. And you have a school age child, so you can't be in the street at midnight. So there are already all of these rules and policies that are in place for a reason that affect people's ability to manage their lives the way in which they want to. Um, so they may see, you know, seeing a mental health practitioner at at the shelter as just an extension of the city or the shelter system or ACS or whatever, you know, you're being associations people have in their mind. Um, and sometimes for very valid reasons, because if you're going through something and you say that you're depressed, um, your social worker is going to make an assessment of your risk to yourself or your risk to anybody else. That's what it is about, right? So that may mean them saying, "Why don't you come and talk to me for a couple of weeks and so that I can get you over this hump?" It may mean referring you out for others for long-term treatment. It may mean helping you reconnect with your family so that you are getting outside supports. It may mean referring you to some kinds of long-term treatment program, whether it's a mental health treatment program or a substance use disorder treatment program. But if the assessment says that you are at risk of harming yourself or your children, or your child is at risk, then as a mandated reporter, you're right, it will lead to a call to ACS.
exactly.
So so you know, while I don't think it is it's not our desire to just call and give people ACS cases, there are times in which yes, it happens.
And it's needed sometimes.
Exactly.
Like the other day with I don't want to put this up in gloomy. Right now when we're recording this, we're in September, and so you'll probably get us in October, November, guys. The other day, my mom drowned. I want to say 2 or 3 of her kids in Coney Island.
Yeah.
I don't
I
believe she was
saw
in a
that in the
shelter at all.
paper.
I don't think she was in a. She was not in a shelter. But the point is that mothers can go through a lot. Parents in general can go through a lot. It'll be a man or woman. Taking care of kids is not an easy feat. It
Mhm.
really isn't. And there's so much stressors in the world right now that could tick you off so bad. Obviously I think what she did was horrible. But if she would have got some help, would those babies have been safe? If people would have came with the signs and really got her the help, could something had happened different? Right now it's if ands or buts. Like you can't do nothing about it because it already happened. But yeah, we might say the ACS has come to take people kids, but some people need their kids taken away from them for a period, not even the whole time, just a period of time until they get their life back in order. Because when you have so much things, it's like a building where it has so much cracks, and the cracks are in every different direction, and it's not. It only start at one location, but it's also now a crack in the back, and then there's water damage. Eventually, something's gonna happen to that building. The building's gonna fall if it's not patched up properly, you know? And if we have so much stressors, not saying that, you know, everyday people don't have stressors, if they do, but they tend to get help. You get therapy, you get these things to help you out. If you're not getting those help, stuff can happen bad to you. You could do something bad to yourself or your kids. So anybody who's listening to this, and if you are stressful, whether you're in the shelter or not, because a lot of people listen and they're not in the shelter, um, please get the help that you need. Don't just sit there and say, yeah, it's gonna pass if you're in deep depression. If you're going a couple of days probably without a shower and you're in the bed and just eating some ho-hos and some chips, and you're just thinking, my gosh, my life is horrible. I should no get help. They have numbers you can call. They'll be in the description down below if you're listening to this, and or you know somebody who needs the help. Check on your friends. It's a lot of things people were saying in the pandemic. Oh, check on your loved ones. No, it's a serious thing. Check on your loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever heard from a person who you know is already bound with depression, a certain amount of time, it's been a month, you haven't seen an update on Facebook, no update on Twitter, no update on Instagram. They haven't said a hi or a bye to you. You don't know if they're still working. Check on these people because
Yeah.
their mental state is just not where it needs to be because there's so much things happening in society right now, especially in New York City. People are getting pushed in the subway. You walking down the street, people have attitudes, and it's just like it's so much things happening in the world right now. Stop being selfish. It sounds mean to say, but we all need to work together as a community to make sure we're all okay.
Yeah,
And
that's so important because, you know, it's so easily we so easily want to push it aside and say, "Oh, I'm going to mind my business," but you know, a hurt child is everybody's business.
right,
Um, and if a hurt human is everybody's business, because if you are in so much, if you are in pain, then you can't take care of your child. You can't take care of your child if you can't take care of yourself.
right,
And if you are in need of help, then there are places where you can. One of the greatest things I think now is that telehealth has been able to make people the availability of mental health services um, much more affordable, and that it is much more readily accessible, because some people don't want to go outside of their house and go to a doctor's office, and there are a lot more people who can access the service. Or now you can even text with
right.
your therapist, and
It's
for
true.
those who don't want to look at someone or see them on the screen. So there's so much more opportunity for people to get the help that they need. um, so, please find a way, call a hotline, talk to a friend. um,
Some
there
of them
are
you need
services and there is
insurance.
help out there.
Right. Some of them you need
Eh,
insurance, some of them you don't. Just see what's out there.
mhm.
Honestly, nowadays Google is your best friend. You can
Eh,
honestly just Google these things. But right now, if you're listening to this, it will be in the podcast description below. Because I want you, if you're listening to this, please get the help. And don't be the person you see a mother and a child having a bad day. You say, "Oh my gosh, she must be the worst." People have bad days. That's just. But if you see it happening for like a week or a month, she probably needs some help. Don't be that person just calling on your neighbors. She's yelling one day. Parents yell. That's what they do sometimes. Some people are
mhm.
gentle parents. Some people are not. It is what it is. But if you see that the child's getting neglectful, hair is not done, clothes are untidy, look like the child's losing weight, the mother's losing weight, she's not taking care for herself, and you normally see her before, like 2 months ago, she was tip top shape, kids always looking perfect. Maybe something is wrong. You could tell people don't usually they can't, they say they can't see it, but it's there. You're just not looking close enough, even though it's in your face. Because if a person is always coming out their house before, hair together, they look a certain way, and 2 months later something's different about them, it might be that they're going through a crisis and they're showing it outwardly, but you're not checking on what that difference is, if that makes any sense. So but yeah. So do you have any last words that you want to tell the people who are listening to the podcast?
I would just Like to say thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you this afternoon. And for everyone listening, just to say that I know that it gets rough. Being unhoused is not for, the weak. However, know that is doing your housing search and getting into shelter, doing your housing search, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know sometimes it can feel overwhelming, and people feel beaten down by their circumstances, but we are all more than, the bigger and brighter than the thing that is the challenge for us at the moment. You're more than what happened to you on your worst day. Um, there are resources that are plentiful, and I think that this podcast is a great service for people who are, currently um, n- who are currently homeless or who are at risk of becoming homeless. Um, and Google and 311 are your best friends.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. So, guys, I hope you listen to the podcast and I hope you got something from it. It's a very different podcast, I feel like, than normal, but I try to bring every different aspect about homelessness and motherhood and or just being a parent in general, because or a caregiver, as they say nowadays, um, and how the homeless people just think that, yeah, they're homeless, they don't have any. It's just it's stressful being in the environment, especially if you never grew up around that kind of environment. Because I personally never grew up being homeless. I just got homeless in my 20s. I was homeless in my 20s, I should say. Um, it could be a lot, but you can get through it. The light at the tunnel, you see it. It's kind of far. You got to jog just a little bit to get to the end, but you're gonna be there. You're not gonna be there forever. I know some people stay in the shelter for 3, 4 years, 5 years. Um, I believe that you go through
You
the
know,
struggle for a reason, and everything
I
happens
just
for a
wanted to
reason.
say, I
Yes.
just want to say one last thing that I want everyone to understand is that being homeless, it's not you're not homeless because people are not homeless because they grew up around it or it's some kind of character flaw. People
Right.
are homeless because they're poor. People are homeless because they can't pay rent. The only reason for homelessness is poverty. It's not an indication of your ethics or your morals or a lack um, of character for you as an individual. People are homeless because they're poor. And I guess those are actually my final words.
I understand. It's I'm I'm gonna put a little tidbit in there, guys. You know, porn has a lot, I feel like a lot to do with it. If you could save a little bit of money here, just in case, God forbid, you go homeless, probably put money aside if you can. Also, it's not only people who are poor. People have fires, like natural disasters. You'd be surprised what could come our way. We seen the last 2 years, Corona happened. People thought they were secure in their job, and all of a sudden, Corona happened. They can't work, and then now they're homeless. So you be so surprised how one thing can change your whole life. So don't look down upon somebody who is homeless, because one day that can be you. Um, just be able to help each other, have empathy for people, help when you can. I'm not saying give a whole paycheck, but if you can give your time to somebody who doesn't know a certain particular thing or just anything, what can contribute to people who are less fortunate or just society in a whole, do that, guys. And if you need help, please call the hotline down below, because there's so much opportunity to get help out here. There's no need for you not to be able to do that. And also, if you need prescriptions, in case sometimes you need medication when you go to these things, they have different apps. RX Homes is a good one. Is it RX Homes or RX something? I'm gonna hopefully link that down below. Also, my team, and they give you discount on medications at different pharmacies. So you have to just tell them which pharmacy you want it at, and they'll send the prescription there, and then you show them in the app. If you have a phone, they have free phones too. So I'm trying to give you all the resources that I can give you right now. And you can get cheaper medication. I know because I use them. I'm not just telling you something I have not used. I have used this app to get cheaper medication for myself, and I have insurance. So sometimes the insurance is not good enough, but this app can help you get cheaper in medication if you end up needing medication in the future. So I hope this podcast is helpful. Again, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. And I said Twitter? I feel like I did. I did. Hope you can follow us. If you want to follow me, Kayden Davis, I'm on all platforms as that name. And you won't find me on Facebook with that name unless you're in a certain group. But anyway, so yes, guys. So tune into the podcast next week, and I hope you enjoy. See you. Well, hope you hear me next time. Bye.